Hello and welcome to another episode of God-Sized Stories. I'm very blessed. I have Colleen with me today. Colleen, tell us about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Craig. My name is Colleen Keefe Faul. I am a wife and a mother of two rambunctious toddlers, one of whom is blessed with special needs. Her name is Grace, and she's precious. I love her. And I am also the author of the Children God's Precious Gift, a Special Needs Child, which is inspired by my daughter, Grace. And she has inspired me to go on to do so many things that I uh, in my wildest dreams. Um, and she is what has led me to Craig and what has brought me here to you today. So that's a
Awesome.
little about me.
Well, Colleen, I was so excited. You reached out to me and we connected online, and someone as well who we discussed this a
Mhm.
little beforehand. I work with kids as well, and I love books. Books are like my favorite thing. And you told me about your book, and I got so excited, and I'm like, oh, yes, I would love to talk to you. I love talking about books. I've had, a different children's author on before, and I'm so excited to keep branching out into this path because that's kind of the whole point of this podcast, because they're stories. Books are stories, and we're so moved by stories. And I'm so excited, and I'm so happy to have you on. Uh, let's circle back to the book a little bit more. Explain to me and the audience a little bit more about the book. What's it about? Why did you write this book?
Sure, sure. So, like I said, my book is called God's Precious Gift, a Special Needs Child. And as you might guess from the title, it's about a child who has special needs. It is basically, I mean, it's listed everywhere as a children's fiction book, but it's a true story. It is based on my experience with my daughter when she was first diagnosed with several very rare and serious conditions. She has something called tuberous sclerosis complex, which is a rare genetic disorder that has a lot of health complications. She also has a rare form of epilepsy called infantile spasms, and she has also been diagnosed with autism. And now we also suspect uh, something called polycystic kidney disease. So she's got a lot going on. And but at the same time, she's my baby. We found out all about all of this when she was 5 months old. She turned 6 months old in the hospital when we found out about this. So this was a little over a year ago. And I'm sure some people in your audience will be able to relate. Anyone who has a child with special needs. When we first found out about my daughter's health complications, it was a very terrifying time for me as a mother. I was so scared. I was worried about her future and what our lives were going to look like and what she'd be capable of doing because her specific conditions have a lot of implications and a lot of complications that come with them. Her development is now in question at all times. We know she's not going to develop like a typical infant and toddler does, and she's on her own journey. So her entire future is now completely unknown to us. And having to walk into the unknown is a very scary thing. And on top of that, also, I had all of these hopes and dreams that I had for her prior to finding about all of this that I didn't even necessarily realize that I had. I guess I just kind of took them for granted and just kind of assumed that she'd learn how to do all these things one day or be able to do all these things one day. And now all of those things are gone. I can't take any of those for granted. And I found myself in what I can best describe as a grieving process.
Hmm.
Not necessarily grieving a death, but grieving a life not lived, a life that I thought she was going to live and that I was going to live by extension and my family's how all of our lives were going to be. Now it was all gone. So I had to grieve that. And I think that that is appropriate and healthy and good to have to do that. Um And it also revealed to me a lot of attachments, earthly, worldly attachments that I had that I didn't even realize I was clinging to, that I had to let go of in order to be able to trust God through this process. So that's a little bit of the backstory behind the book. And so it was during this initial time, not too long after Gracie's diagnosis, that I was still praying. I was still struggling, and I I was praying for a miracle. I wanted my
Mm,
daughter to be healed. I was praying for God to fix my baby. And I didn't want these conditions. I didn't want this situation for her. I didn't want it for her. That's where my mama's heart was. I was praying for a miracle. I wanted her to be healed. I wanted her to be fixed, and I didn't want this path for her. And so I was taking all of that to prayer. I was taking all of that. I've spent so much time in prayer. I had so many very honest conversations with God about this.
mm,
And it was in that I got the idea for this book. And I literally woke up in the middle of the night one night and got the idea. And I just had to get up and I had to type it all out. And I spent hours typing up this story that and I, I was able to go to bed right as the sun was coming up. I woke up a few hours later and I went back and read it. And I went back and read it, and it was like someone else had written it. Like I had memories of typing all of this up, but the content did not come from me. The content, like this was not. These were not my thoughts. I wasn't thinking this stuff before I wrote it down. So I really do think that God just inspired me for the idea for the book. And basically, the story is about it's told from the perspective of the baby in this story. And it's telling the story of how excited mommy and daddy were when they found out they were going to have a baby, and going to the hospital and being so excited to meet their precious gift from God, to meet their baby girl. And then shortly afterwards finding out that their child is going to be a very special child, and she's going to have needs that most other kids don't have. I made sure to use very broad language in the book so that it could apply to everybody.
mm,
But and the parents in the book are very worried and even a little bit scared when they hear this from the doctors. And so they start praying about it. And I and in the book, Jesus actually comes to them and has a conversation with the parents.
mm,
And it starts off with the parents are praying, God, please fix our baby, which was my exact prayer. Please just fix our baby. And Jesus' answer is, fix your baby, but she's already exactly the way I chose to create her. And from there ensues the dialogue where Jesus helps these parents to have a perspective change, and to
mm,
understand that no, like he asks them, "Do you think I make mistakes?" And the answer is no. No, I don't make mistakes, my beloved. And I love how in the book he calls them his beloved. He calls them his children. He calls them all these loving names throughout the entire book. And and no, I don't make mistakes. And it's because I love you so much that I chose you to be the parents of this precious gift, that this precious little girl that I've given you, because she needs parents exactly as amazing as you are. Specifically, she needs exactly the two of you. And
mm,
that's why I gave her to you. And also, she is going to be an avenue of my grace to you. It is by caring for her that you are in caring for her, you will be caring for me. Just like, when Jesus says in the Gospels, when did you care for the sick? When did you feed the hungry? When did you clothe the naked? It's when you did it for one of the least of these, you did it for me. By caring for this little girl, you will be caring for me. And that will be the path for heaven that I have specifically created just for you. And that
mm,
is why she is a gift. She is an avenue of my grace for you. And I love my favorite page of the book. There is this page where Jesus, it's a picture of Jesus actually holding the baby.
mm,
And I love the image. I love the books. I love the wordage of it. Just says, And remember, this child that I gave to you is already so loved by me. I love her even more than you do, and that's a lot. And because I allowed her body to be so special, I made sure that her heart and soul that her mind and soul were special too. And she will have an easier path to heaven than the one most others take. And there's so much, it's very gentle, it's very simple, relatable language that children can understand. But I think it hits the parents just as hard, if not harder, as it does for the kids. And the whole message is just how much God loves you, how nothing is a mistake, how he doesn't make mistakes, and everything is part of a plan, and it's not given as an oversight or a punishment or a mistake. It's given as a gift, intentionally, deliberately, out of love. Given, each child is given as a gift to their parents, to their families, and that is the message. That's the entire message of the book, is how much God loves you by giving you a child with special needs. And that special need could be anything. It could be someone who doesn't have necessarily some kind of a medical condition of any kind. It could be a quote unquote normal child, but every child is a deliberate, precious gift from God. And that's the message, and that's the story. And that is my book. That is what the book is. And it ends with just these tears of fear and of apprehension that started off with the parents towards the middle when they heard this. It ends with those being turned into tears of joy. And it's a beautiful ending, and it's a beautiful book, and you should buy it. Your readers should buy it. It's wonderful.
Yes. Yeah, I always encourage definitely more reading, and I love the heart obviously behind all of it, because it is so true. And it, like, honestly, the church, we have such an important call to, as you did say, like, help people,
Mhm.
especially you're talking like the world would call the least of these. And it's like there's times that it's like I don't think God
Mhm.
sees them, some of them, as the least of these. Like, I have precious, precious memories of a church I was at for
Yeah.
years. There was a man, an adult man there that was a man with autism. I still, this day, I've never met somebody that worships more than this man. Like, when it's time to worship, no one's more
Mhm.
connected than this man is during worship. It was such a joy to be able to stand next to him in the pews and sing, and like, he loved it. And I was like, "Oh God, you're so great." And it's like, as you said, they're blessed in very special ways that we don't get to understand. And it, just because they're slightly different than us doesn't make them less. It doesn't make them less important. It makes them just as important, because they're children of God. As you said, we're all children of
Mhm.
God. We all, and it's like,
Exactly.
I've worked with families through education for years, and I've had to meet many families like in your situation where it doesn't make it easier. It might make it a different challenge for them, but it doesn't make it easier to have to go through. And with all things in life, you need people, you need inspiration, you need guidance. So this is kind of like a two-part question I have for you.
Mhm.
Who have you turned to, A, for parenting help, because it's different than every other parent, because she has different needs than a normal child. That doesn't make it
Mhm.
anywhere else. But as well with the book, because like writing a book is not an easy, like, yeah, you have the maybe more of the written stuff, but then it's like you have this idea, you have this thing. How do you take it from this thing that was written to now this is a thing that is out there that people can buy? It's not just an idea on your computer anymore.
So hold on, that was two questions. You asked how
Yes.
how did I take it from an idea to making an actual book? And then you asked wait, what was the first? I didn't catch quite the first question. Say that
Right.
the first
Like,
part again.
the inspiration, like people that have been in your life to help you, like with the motherhood part, but then also the make this a book
Oh,
part.
who's
They're two
helped?
different
Okay.
things kind of wrapped together.
Well, I mean, they're two different things, but the answer is the same, and that is
Hmm.
my family. My mom, I'm very, very blessed to live next door to my mom and my dad, and they have been here and present and a constant source of encouragement through all of this. It's been wonderful. My husband has been a constant source of encouragement, and he has just been a, a rock for me. He's just been wonderful. And my kids have been inspiring. I mean, Gracie has been, it's been she caring for her has been a roller coaster, because it seems like there's always something new going on with her that needs to be
Mm.
cared for, that needs to be addressed or brought up in therapy. There seems to be always something new that we're addressing, but at the same time, by the grace of God, she is gorgeous, just happy little girl, just loves and wants to be loved. And she is a joy in every room she walks into. She just lights it up. And it's beautiful. And my parents and my husband were this wonderful support structure. And they helped us through taking care of Gracie and getting through all of this murky water that was getting through the diagnosis, and me going through my grieving process that I mentioned earlier, and my husband going through his own version of that. And also my parents, this was their granddaughter. They like, I mean, we all
Mhm.
grieved together and we pulled together and we became a stronger family unit through it. And they were, when I showed them this first draft, like, that morning after I had stayed up pretty much all night writing it, and I showed it to my mom and my husband the next day, they both just broke down crying reading
Ah.
it. And they were like, you have to make this into a book. You have to publish this. People need to read this. And from there, it was just, it was like, okay, the decision is made. Now the only question is how. And from there, um, I did a lot. I watched a lot. Free, just disclaimer, free is my favorite price. So I went onto YouTube and I just started watching all of these how-to videos of just how do you publish a children's book? How do you illustrate a children's book? How do you how do you get a book published, and how do you market a book? And I was just watching all of these videos on YouTube, and that's where I got most of my information from. And then I zeroed in, like, so I ended up finding an illustrator. I wrote it myself, and I had friends and family members help edit it. But then to get it illustrated, I'm not an artist. So I actually hired an illustrator. And I hired a woman. I had gone on to Facebook groups basically and posted, "Hey, I've got this book that I have written. I want to get it illustrated. Are there any people who are interested? Here's my budget. Can you help me?" And I had a lot of people respond, but the one illustrator that I actually connected with was, um, her name is Aisha Hayter. She lives in the UK, and she's a
Hmm.
wonderful, wonderful person and a fantastic illustrator. And she was because I had learned after talking to a few illustrators that there were some questions that were good for me to ask right up front. One of them being, are you okay working on a religious or a faith-based faith faith I can't talk, faith-based children's book? Because some illustrators are not, and they will back out of a job if they find out that it is faith-based. So I asked her that up front, and she said, yes, I'm a Christian. I would be honored to work on a
Hmm.
book that honors Jesus. And she was the first illustrator I had talked to, the only illustrator I had talked to who had shared that she had any kind of faith life, that she was a Christian, that she was in any way actually personally invested in spreading the good news of Jesus. And so when I heard that and when I saw her art, I was hooked. Like, she was great, and she has been a joy to work with. Yeah, it was just like stars aligning, and it just felt so right. And she worked on my book. She did a fantastic job. And I've been so pleased with her. And so once we got the book actually illustrated, and then finally got it, got the finishing touches with the editing done, and the cover, and the ISBN number and all that, then we brought it to I took it to Amazon KDP to get it printed and published, and I published it on Amazon. And then I realized, rude awakening, getting the book done is actually the easy part. Now you have to market. And I am not a marketer. I have no experience in that whatsoever. So that was just like, cannonball head first, like, just it's a whole new ball game, whole different ball game. So I started collecting emails to send news out, to send the word out to people. I I sent out a few pictures, few early illustrations of the book, and I asked people, hey, if you're willing to read a free copy of this book in order to be able to leave me a review on Amazon when it launches, please send me your email and I'll send you a free copy of the book. People love free stuff. They really do. So I got like over 200 emails, email addresses from that. And then I realized that I needed a website because I want to be able to sell my book from my own website instead of from Amazon, because Amazon doesn't really give you a whole lot of royalties when you try to sell stuff on Amazon. So in order to kind of make my money back from paying my
Mhm.
illustrator and all the things I'd spent money on, I wanted to sell it on my website. So I created a free website through Google Sites. And there I had to learn how to do that. That was a learning process, a lot more YouTube videos. And I connected it with Square Up, so that which is a allowed me to make an online store so that I could actually take purchases, which was another free thing to do. So I used Square Up. I created a website, created an online store, and then I started trying to, I started social posting on social media everywhere about my book, telling people that it had arrived, and inviting people to write reviews and to buy it. But then I finally discovered podcasts, which is
Yeah.
what brought me here. And so the thing about what I learned is that people who go on social media, most people are on their phone, they're just flipping through, and they're not really looking for very strong content. They're looking to be entertained. And most people only glance at a post for maybe a couple of seconds before swiping up, and that's
Yep.
all you get. And whenever you post on social media, only about 2 to 6% of the people in your entire social media network are going to see it in the first place, even for that couple of seconds. But on a podcast, you have an audience that is actively listening for however long the podcast lasts, and you have that amount of time to tell them in depth everything about your book, about the story behind it, about the faith that it brought on, and
Mhm.
it's a much more effective advertising tool. And it's free. I can do it at home when my toddlers are napping. I don't have to
Yep.
go travel everywhere and do all kinds of out of the house events. It's very feasible for my lifestyle, my life stage right now, being a stay-at-home mother of two toddlers, and it was workable and it's doable. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And through these podcasts, I've actually gained connections with podcast hosts, and just networking has kind of naturally, organically happened, which has opened a few doors, which is amazing. And it's kind of just all come together. And I had to learn all that kind of on my own. So it was kind of a crash course, but that was the journey I went on. It was crazy, and I spent a lot of late nights working on my laptop with my husband, just kind of feeling like she's married. It's like she's married to her laptop. Like, just my husband kind of felt a little neglected in the early days. So
For sure.
but that's kind of it's brought me here, and it's gotten to be such a privilege, because what the part that I wasn't expecting was that in selling this book and spreading the word about this book, so many families relate to it on such a deep level, because it is such a personal story that so many people have experienced themselves. And it has naturally I didn't foresee this. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. It has brought me into contact with so many of families who have members with special needs of various different types and disabilities. And I have had the privilege of mentoring
Mhm.
several of other parents who have found themselves in this exact same situation, who are just like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I have all of these questions and insecurities and fears and feelings, and I have had the opportunity to just mentor through it. didn't mean for that to happen, but somehow I've become this mentor for parents of children who have just been diagnosed. And that's such a privilege that I never would have never happened if my own daughter hadn't allowed, if I hadn't been allowed to go through this with my own daughter.
Hmm.
And it's just amazing how God brings so much good out of any situation if you allow him to, if you trust him, if you have the faith to say, God, I don't know what's going on and I don't know where you're taking me, but I know your plan is good. And so I know I need to trust you.
That
And that has been my lesson. And that's the moral of the story. Trust God. It's a
I
God-sized story.
I kind of want to I want to end our time together to kind of to shift away from the book a little bit with a little bit of what you were saying there at the end. Maybe some piece of advice or a way that families could pray if they just found out news like this, or they've had this news like, oh, I have a child that is going to have similar struggles. What are some advice or ways that they could pray that you have found really helpful for you? Because obviously, as you said, like that's been a bonus joy of yours, getting the opportunity to love on people. Here's a great opportunity because, as you said, this is a podcast. People are going to listen, and they might have been one of my audience already, or maybe they'll see it, what the topic's about, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's my life right now." What would you say to them?
I would say something that I have found incredibly helpful, and this is true whether you are a faithful person or a person of faith or not. When you're in this situation, we are not meant to deal with this alone. You need community. You need someone who can look you in the eye and say, I know what you're going through and I get it. I'm not judging you for any of the feelings that you're having because you have a right to those feelings. And I love you and I'm here for you and I get it. And so community is something that you really, really need. And so as far as prayer life goes, I found myself wanting community in my faith life. I wanted community in prayer. And what that led me to was, okay, excuse me, who in the Bible, because this is what was thinking. My daughter was going through all of this stuff. And I kept on praying, God, I can say yes for me. I'm okay with you asking me to suffer because I know that suffering has a purpose. There is redemption to be found in it and grace to be found through it. I can say yes to that. I get that. But my daughter is an innocent and she is a year old and she doesn't know to offer this up. She doesn't know how to make sense of what she's going through. And she's just hurting. And that hurts my heart. And so, God, please just like, I can say yes for me, but I don't know how to say yes to let my daughter hurt, to let my little girl suffer. And so, where that led me to was who else in the Bible had to say yes to allowing their child to suffer? And my first thought was Abraham, who had to say yes to sacrificing Isaac. That was my first thought. And Abraham had to have that faith. The foundation of the beginnings of Christianity began with having the faith to sacrifice your own child, to allow your child to suffer. But ultimately, Abraham was spared from having to follow through with that. And he was able to and Isaac was able to live. So God didn't ultimately ask that of him. And I was like, okay, it's good that he had that faith, but he didn't actually have to live with the consequences. So who had to live with the consequences? Who had to say yes and who had to follow through? And that brought me to Mary. That brought
Hmm.
me to the mother of Jesus, who had to say, yes, I will carry this child through this at risk crisis pregnancy. It's going to throw my engagement to Joseph into jeopardy. I don't know what's going to happen. My whole life is going to go into turmoil. But yes, dear God, I'm saying yes to you. And he's going to be the Son of God. He's going to be the Messiah who has to come and suffer and die. And I will say yes to having my child
Hmm.
die for the sins of others. And she was there through every step of the way. She was there for his birth. She was there for having to trying to keep him safe from other would do him harm, from soldiers coming to kill children in Bethlehem. From she had to care for him through. She started his ministry, public miracle ministry. It was she who encouraged him to turn the water into wine. She was there for his crucifixion. She was there. She watched him carry his cross to Calvary. And I know, as a mother, I know her heart, seeing your baby go through pain, and, and to see Jesus, who she knows is innocent, go through that pain. She gets it. She knows. She held her son as they brought him down from the cross and in his arms. She gets what it means to watch your child suffer. She gets it.
Hmm.
And so my encouragement and my advice to people in your audience who are in this situation where they're watching their child suffer, and it doesn't have to be a special needs situation, just anything that could be bringing your child to suffer, I would say lean on Mary. I would say ask for her camaraderie, follow her example. She is the perfect example of trust in the hardest of hard situations. Follow her example, ask for her camaraderie, and that is my advice to you, because
Hmm.
she is the ultimate example of someone who gets it, and she is your community. She is the ultimate special needs mom. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well,
So
Colleen, thank
yeah,
you.
I would that would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking that heart of Mary, as you're saying, and caring for people, loving for people, mostly obviously your family, because it is a big, hard step. And thank you so much for taking that challenge. But then wanting to use that heart to help others just brings me joy. I know, like, it's one of those things, as we said before, it's taking care of those that need, and that just brings me joy. And we are called to do that. God calls us. And thank you so much for answering that call. Thank you so much for having the courage and the faith to go on the journey of making this book to help and inspire others, because it was a big undertaking. It's a different undertaking, and then another big one at the same time. So thank you for all of that. Uh, it's been encouraging for me to hear and to conversate now with you and earlier, and to see where this will go, because I just, like, as I said, I love books. I love the opportunity for sharing books and sharing people's heart through books. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you for having me on. This has been a joy to get to talk about this with you. This has been wonderful.
And audience, thank you so much as always for listening. I couldn't do this without you. Goodbye.